If we go to the first item of business, which is 4.1. Are we right? So just if we just hold off for a moment. Yep, all good now, the video's working? Okay. The first item of business is the draft City of Victor Harbor Community Plan. And the first recommendation is that Council receive and note the draft Community Plan 2030 report. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Schofield, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Kemp. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Charles?
There's just on the very, very first, or the inner page of the community plan, we acknowledge country. And I think what we've just read out tonight, in fact, what you've just read out, Mayor, we could compare the two. They're quite different. The City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the traditional custodians of our beautiful land and surrounding waters, the Ramangeri and Narrandjeri people, and pay our respects to the elders both past and present. I think in the situation that we've got now with Black Lives Matter, that it's time that we got a little bit more serious. I think it was only in the last council we ended up with an Aboriginal flag in this council chamber, and I think it's time that we start really considering what we say and what we do, and how we assist the 70-odd families that we have of Aboriginal heritage, one way or another, in this city that we've got. I think we should start working on that, and I just thought I'd mention that. It's really just a standard. It just looks like a standard. We must say this. So, although I vote for this, I think we could certainly update that and improve that portion of the thing. There's a lot of history to be told.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Yes, CEO McCurdy and I have a meeting on Friday, I think it is, set down to meet with representatives of the Aboriginal community. And if we do meet with them, then maybe that's something that we can bring up and discuss. I think it's a really important matter. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have anything they want to say to receiving and noting the report? If not, I'll put it to the chamber. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The second recommendation is that Council endorse the draft City of Victor Harbor Community Plan 2030 for the purpose of public consultation, and that public consultation will commence on the 13th of June and close on the 13th of July. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Hales, and seconded by Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Littley? No? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Glasbrook.
Thank you. So this is point 2. We're talking about sending the budget out to public consultation.
No, the community plan, Councillor Glasbrook. So it's the community plan to go to community consultation.
Thank you. Sorry.
Do you want to speak to that?
No.
No. Nobody wants to speak to that. I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And the third recommendation is that Council note the communications and engagement plan provided at attachment A in the report. Councillor Schofield, thank you, and Councillor Robertson, thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Very good. Well done, Michelle, again. Communications engagement plan. And I just wanted to quickly confirm with Michelle that her kitchen conversation kit, is that going to essentially be the one that we used in the previous round of this? First round of this?
Through the Mayor, no, it won't be the same as what we used in the first round because we're consulting on the actual document. It will be really probably the feedback form, but if elected members want any further support with a Kit to have conversations like in that first round. I'm more than happy to help put something together for that, but it will be different to what was presented in that first round because we're presenting on the we're consulting on the document as a whole.
Yeah, thanks for that. I would recommend this to other elected members. I used one of these kits for in getting feedback from the Rotary Club of Victor Harbor, and I think it produced some very good results, and I would commend it to other elected members who wish to use it, and I'll be using it again for probably a couple of other groups this time around.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? If not, I've got a question with leave of the meeting for Michelle. And my question is related to the Communication and Engagements Plan. In what way has that had to be modified in relation to the COVID-19, Michelle?
Through the Mayor, to the Mayor. So it has been modified in terms of having a public meeting. Normally we are required to have a public meeting by legislation here in the chamber. So the legislation that came in from the state government as a result of COVID-19 removed that requirement for this year. So we will not be having a public meeting. However, we do plan to host an online Q&A session via Zoom for the community still to have a chance to ask those questions about the budget and also about the community plan.
Thank you. I'm wondering, because it's going to be online on Zoom, does that offer an opportunity to have several online meetings that might address the different demographics in our community? So one perhaps at evening and one during the day, so different people might be able to join in. Is that possible?
Yes, I think that would be quite possible.
Yeah, thank you. Is there, Councillor Charles?
Is that in concrete, that we're not going to have a meeting? It's a month away, or potentially a month away, and things could have changed substantially by then. Our numbers at the meetings are very, very small in any event. I don't know why we're not meeting personally with people as we normally do. The CEO seems to have an answer to you.
Well, it's not a month away, so we'd look to start engagement as of this weekend. It's going to be carried out for a month, and we are unaware at this stage in terms of current restrictions as how they would continue to be eased. And we're also very conscious that there's still some caution amongst lots of members of our community regarding the virus. So we just wanted to provide an environment that we could actually continue to engage. And also suggested to Michelle, there's nothing to say if overwhelmingly through the written response we get members saying we would like to hold a meeting or a smaller group for a discussion. We're happy to accommodate that, but we just felt this is probably the best approach.
Do any other members have any comments, or are there any other questions? If not, I'll put that third recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We now turn to the draft annual business plan and budget. And the first recommendation is that Council receive and note the draft annual business plan and budget report. Councillor Hales, thank you very much, and seconded by Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, Councillor Littley, no. Does anybody want to speak to that? I'll put that to the floor then. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. The second recommendation is that Council endorse that draft annual business plan and budget subject to the endorsed amendments detailing net capital expenditure of $11,360,900 and an operating deficit of $880,900 for the purpose of public consultation, and that the public consultation period extend from Saturday the 13th of June to Monday the 13th of July. Moved by Councillor Hales and seconded by Councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Councillor Glasbrook, you wanted to speak to that?
Oh, first, I just wanted to ask a question in relation to that motion. The fact that you've stated it as net capital expenditure rather than total capital expenditure, which is 14,343,200. That's not a standard procedure? I don't believe anyway.
Through the Mayor, that's how we normally phrase it in all of our budget reviews, is the net capital expenditure and then the operating deficit or surplus. So it's showing that net position of both the capital and operating budgets in the resolution.
Does anybody else have any questions or any comments? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just have some comments on page 15 and 16 of this document where it's provided, where we're provided with a list of capital and operating items for further consideration. Some of those are they're just whole lump sums. For instance, you know, that the community service budget would be considered for cutting, for instance, of 785,000. Well, I would have thought definitely not. But whether there's the possibility that some could be, some savings could be made out of that. But I think at this stage of the game, the major issue is that that we put this out for community consultation. There's still opportunities to see if there's any, if the community thinks there's any further savings to be made. But I think there's probably some in there, but I don't think it'd be all that useful to go through them right now.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Does anybody else have any comments or any contribution they want to make in relation to this? Councillor Charles.
I won't be endorsing this. I'll wait to see what the public have got to say and then make up my mind when we've got that information. We've got another meeting to go on this after that, so that's when I'll look at it seriously. Meantime, it'll be a no from me.
Yep, sure. Can I just remind you, Councillor Charles, that we're not endorsing the budget. We're actually endorsing the draft budget to go to community consultation. So when people vote on this, it's actually not endorsing the budget, but it's endorsing it to go, the draft to go to community consultation to get the community's feedback. Endorsing the budget will be following that feedback when it comes back to the council to be endorsed.
No, that's good. Thank you for the explanation, but no, I won't be endorsing it.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Glasbrook.
Thank you. And firstly, I'd like to thank our Manager of Finance for the extra effort she's put in and receiving our feedback. I was pleased to see some of the things that have been removed. You know, it's nice to know that the administration are really trying to pull some of these things back a bit. So thank you very much for that, firstly. The second thing that I'd like to ask another question of our Manager of Finance in relation to the deficit in the operating budget. On page 16, if anyone wants to try and follow along, the main components of the deficit include, and there's a list there of the withdrawal of Alexandrina for 200,000 from the community regional community programs, the 100,000 for the planning, depreciation increase of 300,000, business Victor Harbour of 100,000, and the adoption of a no rate rise, which are the main things. Of course, there's lots of other little things, but things that the problem that I've got, and I think something that council needs to consider very seriously, and I want our manager to clarify this. These aren't things that are going to go away. These are things that are going to be here this year, they're going to be here next year, they're going to be here for the year after. Alexandrina's pulled out, they're probably not going to come back in. The planning thing, that's probably a one-off. Depreciation, I believe, is something that's going to be here forever. That's new assets that we've built, bought, whatever else, that are going to be on our books, ongoing, not just this year, this is ongoing. Business Victor Harbour, I'm certainly hoping that that's very successful and that's ongoing. And the no rate rise is going to be a $300,000 shortfall ongoing, unless we're planning on doubling our increase next year, which I'm certainly not in favour of, I can tell you now. So can you just clarify that I'm correct in that, please?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, in some aspects, yes. Although the percentages, the dollar amounts aren't exactly transferable. So in terms of the withdrawal of Alexandrina Council from community services, we have put in the budget that we will conduct a review of those community services. And so what that looks like after this year may be very different, but in terms of fulfilling the obligations of our grant funding for acquittal purposes, that's why we've taken that extra hit in 2021. You're right, the PDI Act is essentially, while it's an ongoing process, the implementation and all the changes that were required are a once-off, and there will be some ongoing costs, but they wouldn't be at the same level they've been at this point in time. Increased depreciation due to revals and new assets, yes, that's an ongoing issue as we build new assets. It increases our asset base and thus our depreciation each year. But in terms of revaluations, that fluctuates in terms of whether asset valuations go up or down. They can go either way, depending on market conditions and the industry benchmarks. So again, that is a little bit of an unknown in terms of the quantum change each year. The Business Victor Harbour grant at the moment, it's a once-off. Council has only endorsed it to be in next year's budget. So yes, if Council were going to consider funding that further, it would be an increase. And the no rate rise model for this year, what it does is it reduces our rate base at this point in time, and then the increases from then will be at a lower rate in terms of the entire rate base, but it's not an exact 300,000 for 300,000 in future years. But you are right, Councillor Glasbrook, there are some costs there that we will continue to incur, especially in regards to depreciation for new assets. And that's one of the impacts of building more new things and spreading the cost of those across its useful life.
Thank you very much. And the reason I'm saying that, because I think it's a very important point. I know some people have said, oh, deficit's only a word, and it's been hard times and whatever else, but this is going to be an ongoing issue, and for us to reverse this trend, because potentially we could be in a deficit position this year. We're more than definitely going to be in a deficit position the year after, and to look into the future, we could well be into a deficit position for quite some years to come, unless we do something. Either we put the rates up, or we look at our community services, we try and find ways to save money. And I know many elected members here don't want to do things. They don't want to cut services and they don't want to change things, whereas I strongly believe that we need to look at all of our operations very, very, very closely if we want to turn this around, because I can't see any other way that it's going to happen just by itself. So I think we need to take it very, very seriously. I don't know what we can do about it this year. I still think we need to try. Whether we could cut some things. I mean, I've been going on about the Visitor Information Centre and the Whale Centre and all of those things for many, many years now. They're huge loss makers for this council, and I'm not sure that we can afford them anymore. And I just think the time has come that we need to make some hard decisions, and probably haven't got time to do them before this budget, but during the next 12 months in the build up to the preceding budget, I really do believe that we're going to have to sit down and make some hard decisions, because I can't see how we're going to make this $800,000 up, unless we put up the rates or try and somehow make some money. And I can't see any way of making money other than, unfortunately, our rate income. So I'm not in favour of the budget. I'm not really in favour of going out to the community with this budget because it's not something that I'm proud of. So I don't know what to do, but I just wanted to make members aware that it's potentially an ongoing issue. We need to consider it very, very hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. So any other members have anything to say? Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Kelly, I'll try to go through it again tonight just to try and find some information which I'm looking for, but if you could just clarify with the capital borrowings that we're going to be putting in place, what's the impact on the budget on our current borrowings, what we owe and how much we're paying back per year? So the additional 6-7 million we're borrowing, how much impact would that have? Because as Councillor Glasbrook said, these are going to be ongoing costs that we'll incur every year until we pay those debts down. Considering the fact that sometime in the next year or two, we wanted to be developing a lot of these projects we are putting in place now, and that may impact on our borrowings again, where we might be sitting around 14 million, but in a couple of years' time we might be sitting around 20-something million, and that will have a major impact on our operating budget to pay back down those debts. So if you just give us a basic overview of that process of the debt and how we're paying it down and how do we pay it off? Do we pay additional funding by providing more funding through savings that we pay off our loans, or but basically what is our base repayment if this budget goes through? Thank you.
So through the Mayor, I won't be able to go down to the in-depth level of exactly the amount for each year ongoing. We do have that mapped, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. But the current budget that's before you includes a maximum loan requirement, whether that's fixed term or variable, of around $6 million to fund this level of capital expenditure. The increase in interest expense won't generally be incurred in 2021. It will be the year after that when repayments start. In terms of the borrowings, we currently have around $6 million outstanding in fixed term loans. And around $4 million outstanding on our cash advance debenture at the end of May, while we were waiting for the final quarter of rates payments to come in. So I would expect that to have gone down by now, and be less than that. So in terms of that, that's essentially around what our borrowing level is at the moment. And I would suggest that by the end of the financial year, depending on how much is paid off by the 30th of June off of that cash advance debenture, would be sitting around the $8 million outstanding. So looking at a maximum amount of $6 million to help us pay for the capital next year. We have received a package offer from the LGFA, Local Government Finance Authority, whereby they are offering a discounted variable facility to councils, which is 10% of our revenue. So we've been offered a discounted CAD of around $3 million at an interest rate of 1.45%. So we're in the process of saying, yes, please. We would like to annexure our current CAD and put that into that cheaper account as well, which will help us with dealing with increased interest, both now in terms of what's drawn down on that CAD as well as going through into the next year. In terms of the total CADs that we have around $13 million available to us. And we've got 4 at the end of March outstanding. There is enough within that variable facility for us to not actually have to take out another fixed term loan or another cash advance debenture, because we already have the facilities there. So we would be within our current borrowing capacity, although we could request more money from the LGFA if we needed to for other major significant projects. So I'm not sure if that answered all of your question.
You did, thank you very much. I guess it's just a clarification on what's our repayments for these capital projects loans, whether it's through the cash advance one you just spoke about, or the fixed terms. So we're paying currently principal and interest, or interest only.
So through the Mayor, we pay principal and interest. We haven't got any interest-only loans at this point in time. We can, with our variable, our CADs, we can just pay the interest component because we get issued an invoice on a monthly basis for the amount that was outstanding for that period of time, and we can leave it there. But we put everything except for essentially one salary worth of money straight back into the CAD every time we get money coming in. So we're trying to minimise that interest as much as possible on those variable loans. In terms of repayments, for 2021, we actually have repayments of borrowings at around $2.4 million. So we have a couple of major loans that we will be paying off in 2021, again reducing that base and alleviating the impact of new borrowings.
And perhaps if I can just add, Kelly, on page, for people in the community, on page 16 of the draft annual business plan and budget, there is a graph that looks at debt levels and outlines those two loans that were taken out in 2006 that are due to be repaid in 2021, and the other loans, including the interest rates and the current outstanding principal as of the 31st of March. And there's also a graph that look at our borrowings from 2012 to 2021 and show that trend line is decreasing over that time. And significantly in 2018-19, our borrowings were quite significantly reduced as well, with a number of things that the CEO put into place. So if people want some further information about that, they can have a look on page 16 of the draft plan. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Henderson, you were going to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor to Kelly. Given that we're proposing a no rate rise in the future budget, but our costs will increase by CPI, the argument that's often used is that we should at least increase rates by CPI to cover the council's increasing costs. And to quote a mayor of another regional council, their rates are going up by the full CPI because the council costs go up by that amount. So I wouldn't mind a comment on that. But I have a second question, and that's on page 15. In this list, we have the junior scooter park design. It's not a large amount, but given that we're removing the foreshore detailed design, and I may be wrong, but my understanding was that that design might be incorporated into that. So I'm wondering if it could be incorporated into that, and that, you know, have that as a future planning design and take one small item out of the budget.
The scooter design wasn't specifically to incorporate in the foreshore. It was obviously looking at a design that may well be the best possible place for it. And the foreshore redesign was on the proviso of some funding from the state government around that project. But given the timing of the project, now that the causeway has been pushed out and the impacts on that area, that's why we've pulled that one out of the budget, because we can't see it occurring in the next 12 months. If it does, or if there's funding that comes to fruition, then we can always bring it back to the chamber. But we anticipate with our discussions with DIPTI and the causeway development that it'll be something that may occur in the following financial year. But the scooter park wasn't necessarily within that area. It could be, but it's doesn't have to be removed just because the foreshore is.
So we hadn't actually decided where it might go in the long term. Okay.
Councillor Littley.
Thank you. Look, I absolutely hear what Councillor Glasbrook has said, and I thank him for pointing out the fact that those costs, you know, some of them are ongoing, and it's an impact that will be felt into the future as well. That said, it sits okay with me going out to the public with this draft budget, because it is only a draft. We haven't decided on it, and we can still have those discussions afterwards. It shows clearly that we're working, what we're working with, so we're pointing out, being quite open and transparent, what we're working with to provide them with a zero rate rise. And that's something that our community has, for ever since I've known it, has always asked for. They've wanted it. Every year turns around, if we put rates up, there's the public's going, why do you have to rate us more? But this is what we need to work with while maintaining the services that we provide. So that sits okay with me going out to the public with that, because hopefully it, you know, we're also showing that we're making the most of opportunities that are with us right now. So Victor's going to be very active in this time that this budget's being played out while we're in the 2021. But hopefully the community comes back to us and tells us very strongly what it is they can do without, what service it is. So, and then we can go into the final deliberations over our budget with a clear sense of what the community is willing to give up to have that zero rate rise. We need them to tell us. We need them to tell us what it is that they're going to give out. Otherwise, we're, in some part, taking stabs in the dark at what people are going to miss or aren't going to miss.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Does anybody else? Oh, sorry. You had a further question? No? Oh, I beg your pardon, Kelly.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, so just in regards to the question about CPI, normally I would always be presenting a budget that was CPI plus growth. That makes sense in a normal budget in terms of our expenses have gone up, so we need to cover those. I guess in terms of, there's a couple of big issues at play were COVID-19 and the impact on the community, and council's appetite within the chamber for a rate rise, any rate rise, whether it was near CPI or the local government price index or a portion of. So I guess I've put aside my normal finance hat in one way, which would have normally stuck with that CPI plus growth, in consideration of those extenuating circumstances. And in terms of doing that as a once-off, the impact is a deficit budget in some ways, although there are other costs in there as well. But I don't think it's something that council can't recover from, giving a no rate rise for 1 year in extenuating circumstances, which is what we've got at the moment.
Kelly, sorry about that, Councillor Henderson. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Councillor Mann, you haven't spoken. Is there anything that you would like to say? No questions? If not, Councillor Hales, do you want to close the debate? No. I'll then put that recommendation to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. And there are no confidential reports for Council's decision, and I declare the meeting closed at 6:05. Actually, it's not 6:05, that clock's wrong, it's 11 minutes past 6, 6:11. Thank you very much, and thank you to the community who have been listening, and I look forward to your comments on the draft budget for this year.